Hello, YouTube. It is your boy GZTV. We are back with another weekly edited movie review, and this week we have the 2014 American horror film, written and directed by David Robert Mitchell. It follows. Maika Monroe is the main character. She stars in the film, and yeah, you have Keir Gilchrist, Daniel Zavados, Jake Weary, Olivia Liccardi, Lily Seppi. So yeah, and this movie has had a pretty big cult following over the last almost 10 years. This is one of the craziest concepts for a horror film we've gotten in years leading up to this release. And I have a lot of memories with this movie. This isn't a first watch. My cousin used to watch this movie all the time. It's a good movie. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Now we start off with the plot. By the way, this is spoiler alert. We are going to follow the entire movie, and then we're going to give a review towards the end. So this is about a girl named Annie Marshall. She runs out of her house. That's like this beginning character, seemingly being pursued, but denying that she needs help to onlookers, because she probably looks crazy because no one else can see this entity. She runs back into her house, then runs out with car keys and drives away. That night, Annie Marshall sits alone on a beach, frightened, and calls her parents to tell them she loves them because she knows there's no escaping this entity. In the morning, her mutilated corpse remains on the beach, and this is one of the most shocking cuts in the fucking movie. All of a sudden, she's sitting on the beach, and then boom, snap to morning, her fucking limbs are fucking destroyed. She's sitting there dead on the beach, and this beach is pretty important to the film, so I guess remember that. Oakland University student Jay goes on a date with her new boyfriend Hugh. So this is the main character. We're getting to the main story. That intro is just kind of introducing the main monster in the movie. So at a movie theater, Hugh points out a girl in a yellow dress that he sees that no one else sees. When Jay says she cannot see the girl, Hugh is unnerved and asks that they leave, and we soon learn that he realizes that this curse is still upon him. It is still following him, and that's obviously where the title of the movie comes from. On another date, Hugh and Jay have sex for the first time in his car, but afterwards he incapacitates Jay with chloroform, he suffocates her and then ties her to a wheelchair. And he wants her to know that he's not crazy. He actually fucking sees something, and they just had sex, so now she has the curse, and obviously we learn very quickly that that's how the curse is kind of passed. That's how this it follow thing is passed on. She wakes up tied to a wheelchair in the Packard plant, where Hugh explains that she will be pursued by an entity that only they can see, and which can take the appearance of any person. So now you're paranoid. This movie creates a sense of paranoia because you're walking around and whoever's following you, you're like, oh shit, is that the entity that's here to kill me? Yeah. Very interesting concept. I loved it. If it catches Jay, it will kill her and pursue the previous person who have passed it on, Hugh. So while Hugh is happy that he got rid of the curse, he also wants to protect Jay because this person is going to come after him if the person gets Jay. He urges Jay to have sex with another person soon to pass it on. And by the way, if I sound a little sick, it is what it is. So yeah, she needs to have sex. He waits until a naked woman slowly approaches them to prove Jay is being followed, then drives Jay home and flees. He just wants to show her what it would look like for someone to be following her, and what the entity can be. And most of the time, the entity takes on forms of people from their past life and all that stuff, things they're possibly afraid of. And yeah. The next day, the police cannot find the naked woman or Hugh, who is living under a false identity. His name's actually John, I believe. Jay goes to the hospital and is determined that she has not caught a sexually transmitted infection, which, maybe that's the creator telling us that it's not about STDs, even though, people kind of circulated around that it could possibly be about that. At school, Jay sees an old woman in a hospital gown walking towards her, invisible to others, and flees. And the way to tell if this is the entity is you tell people, do you see that? And if they don't see it, then yeah, that's the person. I don't even know what to call this monster. The movie doesn't give it a name, by the way. Jay's sister Kelly and her longtime friends Paul and Yara spend the night in Jay and Kelly's house to support Jay because they think she's losing her fucking mind when really she has every reason to be freaking the fuck out. Someone smashes a window. Paul investigates but sees no one. Like when the entity affects like the physical nature of this world, then like people can hear it and kind of see it. It's pretty much a ghost to everyone but Jay. Jay then sees a disheveled, urinating, half-naked woman walking towards her and runs upstairs to the others who cannot see the entity, and again, they think she's crazy. When a tall man, seemingly with no eyes, enters the bedroom, Jay flees the house by bike, and now they're getting super worried about her because she could possibly hurt herself. But I mean, really, she's just running away from this thing. With the help of their neighbor Greg, the group discovers Hugh's real name, Jeff Redmond, and finds his home. It's not John, it's Jeff, sorry. Jeff's mother answers the door, and Jay realizes the naked woman she saw in the Packard plant was in the form of Mrs. Redmond. So again, they take on multiple different forms of like things that kind of connect to the person that's has the curse, and yeah. Jeff explains that the entity began pursuing him after a one-night stand and that it is slow but relentless. It'll never stop until you pass it on. He urges Jay to protect them both by passing it to another person through sex. Like, you need to give someone else this thing, and really it should be a stranger. Greg drives Jay, Kelly, Yara, and Paul to his family's lake house and teaches Jay to shoot a revolver, so they're kind of chilling out, trying to get away from this thing and enjoying some time. It's kind of like a teenager getaway part of the movie, I suppose. The entity arrives in the form of Yara and attacks Jay on the lakefront, and Yara is like with them, so it's super confusing. Jay's friends hit it with a chair, but it throws and scratches Paul, and they realize just the gratitude of this thing, just the strength of it through doing that. Jay shoots it in the head, but it recovers quickly and attacks her again, taking the form of Jay's young neighbor, and now we realize that this thing is invincible. You can't kill it, it's immortal. And until you pass it on, it'll keep infecting the next person, or that person. She flees in Greg's car and crashes, then wakes up in a hospital with a broken arm. I mean, I guess, yeah, the hallucination kind of did get her hurt. But her friends now realize that she's not crazy, something is actually happening, and this thing is actually real. So, Greg has sex with Jay in the hospital as he does not believe the entity exists. It's not that he's sacrificing, he's like, oh, the entity doesn't exist, let me prove it to you. Days later, Jay sees the entity in the form of Greg walking towards Greg's house. It smashes a window and enters, and now her mission is to save him, pretty much. Jay runs into the house and finds the entity in the form of Greg's half-naked mother attacking Greg. Oh my, it's fucked. This is a really fucked up scene in the movie. When Jay then sees the entity having sex with Greg's corpse, she flees by car and spends the night outdoors, because she doesn't want to sit in her house where he can catch her, you know. She wants to be able to look all around her, rather than being trapped. It's helpful to be out in the open so you can see it coming. Yeah. On a beach, Jay sees 3 young men on a boat. She partially undresses and walks into the water. Back home, Paul, willing to take the risk, asks Jay to pass it on to him, but she refuses. And really, the strategy should be to not pass it to someone you know. You should be passing it to a random person so this person doesn't come into your life again. But then again, if that person dies to the entity, you're going to be attacked again. So it's kind of a trap at this point. The group plans to kill the entity by luring it into a swimming pool and dropping electrical devices into the water. And I wonder if Stranger Things got this like swimming pool scene from this movie, because it's very reminiscent of that. Obviously 2 different things happen, but yeah. Jay waits in the pool until the entity arrives with the appearance of her father. This is like the final boss, it seems. Her father that she lost possibly when she was young. You don't really know the backstory completely of this character. Instead of entering the pool, it throws the devices at her and tries to electrocute her because she's in the pool. Firing at an invisible target, Paul accidentally wounds Yara but shoots the entity twice before it falls into the pool. As it pulls Jay underwater, Paul shoots it again, and Jay escapes. She alone sees the pool filling with blood, and obviously it's very like traumatic for her because they pretty much killed her father, like as the entity. But yeah, you have to kind of incapacitate it if you want to get away from it, if it's actually attacking you. So back at Jay's house, Jay and Paul have sex. So Paul's going to get this curse. That night, Paul drives through town, passing prostitutes to try to pass it on to them. Yara recovers at a hospital. Later, Jay and Paul walk down the street holding hands as a figure walks behind them, and obviously it's kind of like a cliffhanger type of ending because we don't know if this is the entity or did Paul get rid of it. That's kind of the question we're left with going out of the film. So yeah, I'm going to review it and then we are out of here, guys. So kind of talking about what people think of the film and what I think. This is kind of like a final thoughts section. It's a pretty good episode. I mean, we always talk about Rotten Tomatoes where it got a 95%, 8.1 out of 10, 270 reviews. This is a pretty popular movie over the years, it has been. Smart, original, and above all terrifying, It Follows is the rare modern horror film that works on multiple levels and leaves a lingering sting. Now, people claim, horror movies have gotten worse over the years, but this movie is a good example on why it hasn't. 8.3 out of 10 on Metacritic, 37 reviews. People love this movie, I'm telling you. It's the sixth most praised film. It's at least a top 10 film of 2014 by a lot of people, and possibly even a top 10 horror movie of the 2010s for some people. This movie is fantastic. Starting off strong before losing its way in the end. Really, I mean, it kind of does. This stylish, suspenseful thriller should significantly broaden Mitchell's audience without disappointing his early supporters in the slightest. Again, I'm kind of like reading critics and kind of giving my own thoughts off of them. Yeah. Creepy, suspenseful, and sustained, this skillfully made lo-fi horror movie plays knowingly with genre tropes and yet never winks at the audience, giving it a refreshing face value earnestness that makes it all the more gripping. Perfect 5 out of 5 on the Daily Telegraph. With its marvelously suggestive title and thought-provoking exploration of sex, this indie chiller is a contemporary horror fan's dream come true. This is where, a unique concept actually works for once. People try to take different directions. People have tried in the past to get experimental with movies, and it just hasn't worked as well as this movie. And I have great memories with this movie. Like I said, I've watched this quite a bit of times, and I've enjoyed it each time. And it brings me back kind of to like my childhood. I was 11 years old when this movie came out, which is kind of crazy, but yeah. Despite all the fun to unpack ideas swirling around Mitchell's premise, this is first and foremost a showcase of his considerable talents as a widescreen visual stylist, which are most apparent in the movie's deftly choreographed, virtuoso 360-degree pans. And yeah, I mean, the directing's great, the shots are great, it's a very effective movie, pretty good jump scares. I wouldn't say this is necessarily a scary movie because I guess over the years I've kind of been desensitized to certain movies, but I still think it's amazing. I still think that Mitchell made a very good movie with this one. The film is creepy, mesmerizing exercise in minimalist horror. It's a classical horror masterpiece that I feel like is going to be looked upon and used for inspiration for the time, like the years to come. And it hasn't even been a decade since this movie has come out, and it's already like had a big effect on a lot of horror movies. It's probably one of the best horror films, like up to that point, probably one of the best horror films since some of the classics. Um, yeah, it's a great movie. This movie has a cult following, like I said, and there is great reason why. The concept, obviously, this whole curse thing is, I mean, quite old and a little bit aged in horror movies, but the type of curse that it has is so sick. I mean, and we see movies like Smile that I've reviewed on the channel before that kind of had this sentiment of like, oh, there's a curse, you have to pass it on by doing a certain thing. And yeah, just a really cool, really effective movie, and it's very enjoyable. Like, watch it with your friends, watch it with your family. I had a lot of fun with it. But anyways, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, it has been GCTV, giving you guys the best movie reviews, best TV show reviews out there. I mean, obviously, that's debatable. Let me know your thoughts on this video in the comments. Like, should I do more edited movie reviews? We're only doing horror films for quite some time, because again, that scratch-off thing. I forgot to show you guys that, actually, before we leave. Before we head out here. There you have it. It Follows. We obviously did A Girl Walks Home Alone in the last video. So, I'm out, guys. Peace.